Welcome into Mock Trial Masterclass, your guide to controlling the courtroom. I'm Luke and I want you to be a mock trial master. Let's talk about how you can make that happen. The very first thing that happens in virtually every mock trial round is pre-trial or preliminary matters. And though this part of a mock trial isn't scored, right? No one is writing down a score for your performance during pre-trial or preliminary matters. What is happening is that scorers and the judge are developing their first impression of you. And so during preliminary matters, it is vital that you handle them well. There's no room for clunkiness. There's no room for seeming like you don't really know what you're doing. You've got to be completely in command and completely in control of the courtroom from moment number one, even though it's technically not being scored. So what I'm going to give you in this video is just two simple steps you can take to have a really effective preliminary matters performance every single time. If you're being tasked with handling preliminary matters for your team, know that you've got a really big task on your hand, and it's really important that you do it well. And I think that if you follow these two steps we're going to go over, that's exactly what you'll do. So, ready to hop in? Let's do it. The first thing you'll want to do to have an effective performance in preliminary matters is you'll want to introduce your team to the judge. And my preferred way of doing this is to simply have one person, that's you if you're doing preliminary matters, talking on behalf of the team, as opposed to having each individual person stand up and introduce themselves. Because when that happens, it can tend to get a little bit clunky. You start to look at a little bit like whack-a-mole, because then like someone stands up when they weren't supposed to, or someone's like, and you know, start interrupting each other. And you just avoid all of that if one person speaks on behalf of everyone. So what does that look like? Well, if I'm doing preliminary matters and I've got Bob to my left and I've got Joe to my right, here's what that would look like. I would stand up if it was morning, and I would say, "Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Luke Worsham, and I will be representing the plaintiff in today's case. I'm joined today by Mr. Joe, who's on my left." And at that point, Joe would stand up and he would say, "Good morning, Your Honor." And I can't remember the other name I said, Mr. David will say, on my right. And then David would stand up and say, "Good morning, Your Honor." And then they would sit down, right? What I don't think you should do is introduce your witnesses. You may want to if the judge asks you to, and if you've got a witness sitting with you at counsel table as a party representative, you can introduce them, right? And today the plaintiff will be represented by the plaintiff himself, Mr. Smith, and then Mr. Smith stands up, "Good morning, Your Honor," right, and that takes care of it. But what I don't tend to like is these team introductions that get into the realm of as if we're at the end of a play and announcing the characters that we were portraying. I am this person and I'm playing the character of this today, right? I see this a lot in mock trial, and it just kind of looks goofy. My preference is really, if at all possible, to not break the fourth wall, meaning that we're pretending that this is a real trial, and unless absolutely necessary, we're going to keep pretending this is a real trial. We're not going to break that wall by saying, my name is this and I'm playing the character of whoever. If the judge or your tournament asks or you're required to introduce your witnesses, that's fine. I'm not telling you to go against what they're saying. But if it's up to you, just introduce your attorneys, introduce a witness if they're sitting at counsel table, and leave it at that. What this also does, introducing yourself and your co-counsel during preliminary matters, is it keeps you from having to do it during your opening statement. I really don't like when teams get up in their opening statement and they waste precious time saying, my name is whoever, and I'm joined today by my co-counsel, this guy and that girl, and we're honored to be representing whoever in today's case, right? Because you only have 5 minutes in virtually every tournament for opening statement, and I think it's such a waste of those 5 minutes if you're introducing yourself when you could have done that, or perhaps you even did do that during preliminary matters when the clock isn't running. So take advantage of that. Introduce yourself and your co-counsel during preliminary matters, and that's really the first step to doing it effectively. All right, before we get into the second step of doing preliminary matters effectively, I want to remind you that my book, Mock Trial Masterclass, is available for purchase on Amazon. Believe it or not, there's a whole chapter in this book on pre-trial and preliminary matters. Look at this. Pre-trial and preliminary matters, right? What other book has a whole chapter on this stuff? But seriously, if you want to do pre-trial and preliminary matters well, or any other component of mock trial well, this is the book for you. I've boiled down everything I've learned in mock trial over the last many years into this book to give you a championship plan that anyone can understand. There's some big words in here because you got to learn some big words if you're going to do mock trial, but I promise you won't be overwhelmed. Everything gets explained very easily, very simply, and I hear from students who use this book that they love it, that they're enjoying it. It's helping them take their performance to the next level, and I know that it can do the same for you. So if you want to pick up a copy now, you can do so by clicking the link in the description on YouTube or in the show notes on podcast platforms. All right, so the second part of preliminary matters, once you've introduced yourself and co-counsel, is what I'll call housekeeping. And that's really the whole point of preliminary matters, right? Is you introduce yourselves and then you take care of some housekeeping matters. Now, it's important to remember as we get into this part, what you're not doing is showing off any kind of legal knowledge here, right? I encounter these teams all the time. It's like they want to read the entire rules of evidence or law or case rules in the record. It takes forever and it's agonizing to sit through, and you just wish they would stop talking, and it takes them 10 minutes to get through their preliminary matters, right? That's not what we're going for here, right? We're going for legitimate housekeeping questions that we might have. And there's really a list of very common ones that get asked. I'll throw 5 of them up on the screen for you right now if you're watching on YouTube, and we can take a look at them together. The 5 most common questions about housekeeping you'll get during preliminary matters are, do we have permission to move about the courtroom freely throughout the trial? Asking if you can offer the agreed stipulations into evidence. Asking if you'll need to ask later for permission to approach witnesses or opposing counsel, or if that's just not necessary. Asking if the judge is aware of a specific important rule or stipulation that governs the trial, or asking if the witnesses in the trial are presumed to have been sworn in, or if each witness will be individually sworn in throughout the trial. Right? What I would like you to do is to, if you're going first, pick 3 of those questions to ask during preliminary matters. Because when you ask all 5, or you start to get beyond 3, you run into the territory that we were talking about a minute ago, where your preliminary matters are taking forever and it's not going to end anytime soon. People check out before the trial has even started. Asking 3 will allow you to, put yourself in command of the courtroom, have a presence in front of the jury early on, give them a good first impression, but also sit down before people get tired of hearing you talk about these, very menial things that don't really matter a whole heck of a lot to the trial. Right, I said pick 3 questions if you're going first. If you're going second, right, usually the defense is going to go second in preliminary matters most of the time. If you're going second and there's still 3 questions from that list available, by all means take them, right? That's fine. But if there's only 2 questions left on that list and the other side took care of, most of them, just ask those 2 questions and then say, hey, the defense is ready for trial. If you're the plaintiff, hey, Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready for trial. If all of those questions got taken, right, what you might want to do is just look at the judge and pick a stipulation you think that's important and say, Your Honor, before we begin, we just want to point your attention to stipulation number 8 and let you know that it says this and make sure you were aware of that. You want to say something, right? That's a good thing to do. But here's the thing. If you're sitting there thinking, man, the other side is covering all the things and there's nothing left on that list Luke gave me to cover, what are we going to do? Here's what I'm going to guarantee you is that if the other side covered all 5 of the things on that list, it took them forever to do it, and the jury is already tired of listening to them talk. So if you then are able to stand up and give the judge one quick little note and then say the defense is ready for trial, or if you're the plaintiff is ready for trial, do you know how glad the jury will be that you stopped talking and you didn't take an eternity to get through your preliminary matters? Trust me, they will be thankful for you at that point. So again, take that list, go back, pause the video, take a screenshot of that list if you want to. Pick 3 questions from that list to ask the judge during the housekeeping part of preliminary matters, and then sit down. Again, if there's not 3 questions, pick what's left. If there's nothing left, pick a stipulation, and then sit down. So you may be thinking at this point, well, that's it? That's really simple. Yeah, that's it. See, the thing about preliminary matters is you don't want to make it more complicated than it needs to be. Again, and there are some competitions, like Empire does this from time to time, where during preliminary matters you need to make an objection argument. And if that's what your competition is calling for, by all means, that's what you need to do. But generally speaking, in AMTA and college and in traditional high school mock trial, you're not going to have to do that. And most of the time, that's not even allowed. When you don't have to give an objection argument, when that's not part of the competition, preliminary matters pre-trial is simply about making a good first impression, getting everyone on the same page with some housekeeping questions, and introducing yourself and co-counsel. And that's it. If you try to go too far beyond that, try to show off too much, you're wasting everyone's time, and they will know that you're wasting their time, and they'll want you to stop talking. So don't do that. Introduce yourself and your co-counsel, pick a few housekeeping items to go over, and if you can do it and do it with confidence and you're not stumbling over your words and you've practiced and prepared and you're able to perform effectively, you will handle preliminary matters at the level of a mock trial master.